the prophets. If you will, we covered pretty much the first 3 chapters. Anybody have any comment or thought, lessons that you'd like to bring from those first 3 R-rated chapters? You know, at least fairly quickly, God lets you know that He means serious business. As you look at Hosea chapter 1, the 2nd verse, what does that say? You don't have to read it. What are the first 3 chapters? What's God saying through Hosea, the prophet, in the first 3 chapters? What's his point? They've departed from the seriously, and in the same way that what? He's comparing to a human, right? He's giving you a picture. You know, no one knows. It's the argument of the ages as to whether Hosea was told to marry a prostitute or whether she became a prostitute. But regardless, you know, and then some just don't want to believe it possible, and they say it's simply a figure of speech, and perhaps it is, but I think not. So he gives us 3 chapters on Hosea and his harlot prostitute wife, but every time you read, as you read through there, don't fixate on Hosea. You know, I'm sure he had to fixate. That was his thing. But certainly, you should, if you're going to fixate on the covenant people, the Hebrew people who God is simply comparing in a parallel way. Hosea has a wife who's a prostitute who runs off and leaves him in adultery. She has 3 kids. The first one is likely Hosea's kid. Maybe all 3 are of his body. But if you read it in a certain way, you see that the first child is named Jezreel, which is a battleground place. Historic battles fought in the Hebrew, among the Hebrew nations with other folks. And God says, you know, Jezreel, name him Jezreel, because there's going to be a battle in Jezreel, and you're going to be slain, Israel. And sure enough, that's what is going to happen. Then he names his next child. Now, first of all, look at it, and it says, and again, I don't make too much of it, but the first child, Jezreel, it said that she bore him a child. Him's there in the Hebrew. And then the next two, it doesn't say she bore him. It leaves out the him. And remember, she is a prostitute. And it just simply says that she bore a child. She had a child. And the next one was named No Mercy. No Mercy. And God, read it and see what God's saying, see? And God's saying, I'm going to have no mercy on you, Israel. And then the third child, what does God say to name him? Not my people. How would you like to be named by your daddy? Not my people. Okay. So that's where we are. The first 3 chapters are parallel. It's a parallel between Hosea and his family, the prophet, and God and his family, the Hebrew people. Okay? And it sets you up for the rest of the chapters. Now, 4:14, and it's written very poetically. Okay? Don't let that frighten you. Lots of the Bible is written in poetry, if you will, poetically. And there's a lot of the words and phrases that are idioms. Some of them are difficult to translate in English, and you'll find some of the translations vary just a little on the nuances on some of those things. And don't worry about that either. It's a dead language. This is the Hebrew that is a dead language, not today's Hebrew. So there's certainly questions. So anyway, that's the first 3 chapters. Set you up for chapter 4 through 14, and he's gonna give it to Israel now. Okay. if you hadn't already. So we'll do 4 through 14. That was my if you have questions, there's my email, etc. I'll pause briefly. This is my, if you don't like this chart, it's my fault. I think I fall in love with this, though, because I think I add something every week, and now no one can read it but me. It certainly contains the slice of history that we're in and all that's happening. And if you look at it, if you were to look at it closely, you kind of see that the empires that are in charge is Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and Persia, kind of the world empires, if you will. The dates are all BCs, okay? And you know at about 425, Malachi speaks his the last guy that speaks. Nehemiah lived about the same time, but Malachi speaks his last book in our English Bible, Old Testament. The Hebrew Old Testament, the last book is Chronicles, okay? But in our Old Testament, that's the last book and it's the last prophet, and we covered that, okay? So about 425, and then that's the silent period. The silent 400 years, so-called because nobody wrote, no inspired person wrote. Lots of writing was done. And then, of course, Jesus is going to come at about 5 or 6 BC because they couldn't count right, well, when they did the calendar, okay? By the time they got it together. So, okay, any questions or comment about this one? I added a couple of things. Like I said, I need to quit doing this, but I did add this. The dates, the arrows I added. The blue arrow there. That's 931. That's when Solomon died. That's when the divided kingdom began. Northern kingdom called Israel, Ephraim, and Jacob. Those are names it's given. Southern kingdom called Judah. And so what I basically put here was it only lasted from the northern kingdom, 931 to 722. And Hosea is prophesying. If you reach down here, see, there's Hosea. It's towards the very end, okay? In fact, he goes past the end in his lifetime, I believe. So they fall, and you'll see that Judah's hanging on. They got a few kings that are okay. And so they hang on a little longer. And I got that blue line there to show 931 to 606 is when things start getting unraveled. 586, it's the end. In Jerusalem, the temple's destroyed. Okay. Any questions or comment on that? All right, and then here's where we are. Next week, Lord willing, we'll start with Micah. And if you looked on that chart, you see that all these prophets live fairly close together. Micah's in the southern kingdom, and he's going to talk about Judah. And he's going to tell them, you're gone too. But he also addresses the northern kingdom. Whoops, what did I do? Oh, all right, so there's the Micah, okay? See all these people right about the same time. Isaiah is prophesying at about the same time as Micah. Yeah, probably into Hosea, certainly Micah. All right. And Jim taught Isaiah very well done, months, maybe a couple years ago. All right. Comments, thoughts? No? All right. We'll begin here. Here's kind of here I've got 9 minutes. This is my first chart. Here's where we are. This is Hosea, okay? He did prophesy in Israel. It's towards the end. King Jeroboam II, amongst, I don't know how you could say he's the worst, because there were some really bad kings in the northern kingdom amongst God's people. But he was certainly bad. He was very bad. But he brought prosperity. He made them feel good. They thought things were great. But yet they were worshiping Baal and Asherah and other idols. And you know that idols, let's just talk about idols a second. Idol worship. You know, there's really three kinds of idols, or three points of interest when you deal with idols. Idols are to sex. Sex is the main point in one. Weather is another one. You know, it's the god of the sun, the god of the crops and good weather and rain. And then the third one is the god of war. That's basically, when you boil out all this idol worship, just look a little bit behind whatever it's named, and you'll find that one of those three is the biggies. We humans are real interested in sex, war, right, and weather, right? We are. And the Bible tells me that. Okay. Hosea's mission was painful. And read Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. And then read what he had to put up with. And then read 4 to 14. It is emotional, okay? His heart is just ripped out of him over what's happening. Okay. Then you got to know that these are covenant people. These northern people are covenant people of God. They're part of the Hebrew nation. They're part of the folks that were brought out of Egypt by Moses. Okay? But they went off. They went off right away when the nation was divided. Also know that you'll usually the word Israel, the word Ephraim, which is one of the sub-tribes or tribes, or Jacob will be used to name them, okay? Sometimes it's used as all of Israel, but as a nation they're called those three in the Bible, okay? All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead. Let's go into it. Let's look at the book. Chapter 4. We're going to run through them. I picked verses. Please take a look. If you got time, read the whole chapter. Look at verses I left out. And there's some good stuff there. These are covenant people. The Bible is a library of prophetic books about God and being His covenant people. We're His covenant people. That's what it's about. All the way through. And Hosea is certainly dealing with that. It's the character of God and how God is relating to His covenant people. All right. Chapter 4, verse 1 through 2. Hear the word of the Lord, O children of Israel. For the Lord has a controversy with the inhabitants of the land. There is no faithfulness or steadfast love, no knowledge of God in the land. There is swearing. Listen to this list. That's what there's not that should be. And then he says, there is swearing, lying, murder, stealing, committing adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. These are God's people. These are covenant people, okay? And I said, beyond awful. I think so. Here's the list. I just read them. You know, you heard it. But when you see the list, it's pretty, wow, what kind of people are these? You know? Is this going on in America? Certainly a lot of it is, isn't it? Let's hope us covenant people aren't doing this. That's, okay. So is God happy? No, that's why He's not happy, you know. Okay. Verse 6, chapter 4. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being a priest to me. Remember, most people don't realize, you know, we're called to be a royal priesthood. Peter says that. And sometimes we think, whoa, we're different covenant people than the Jews. No. The Jews were called to be priesthood too, or a priesthood of the whole. Now they had priests, Levites, priests, but they were called to be a priesthood. Okay, they were. And if we had time, we'd go back and I'd show you that, but you can look it up. I reject you from being a priest to me. And since you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children. God is not happy. All right? All right. Chapter 5. I know Ephraim, that's Israel, okay, and Israel is not hidden from me. For now, O Ephraim, you have played the whore. Israel is defiled. How does Israel play the whore? How do they do that? God is the husband. How do they play the whore? Yeah, that's it. They go chasing after other gods. They aren't gods. You know, and he tells them that. And if you read this whole thing, he says, you're chasing after gods who aren't gods. You know, stuff you make out of stone and wood. You know. Verse 4. Their deeds do not permit them to return to their God. For the spirit of whoredom is within them, and they know not the Lord. The pride of Israel testifies to his face. Israel and Ephraim shall stumble in his guilt. Judah, that's the southern king. Judah also shall stumble with them. I wanted to note because I hear the word, it's yada, but I hear yada. What was the show? I heard yada, yada, yada all the time. Oh, I can't remember. Huh? Yeah, Seinfeld. Anyway, yada, I was there. In Hebrew, yada is knowledge, but it's more than intellectual knowledge. Yada is. It's intellectual, but it's the difference between I know you intellectually. I know who she is and all that, but it's the difference between I know her, my daughter, and I know her. Okay, and relationship-wise. And see, God wants more than intellectual. They know about Yahweh, okay? Israel knows that. They know, because they actually worship him as well. They worship him, and then they go worship Baal. They know who he is, but they don't know him. And he demands, and that's for covenant people, that we have relationship with him, that we know God. And so he says that, for the spirit of whoredom is within them, and they yada not the Lord. Okay? All right. And I said there is a point in which evil in man permits no return to righteousness. You can get...
Yeah, your heart becomes hardened.
Yes. And that's what's happened to these people. And yes, it could happen to us. Yeah. All right. Verse 11 through 14. Chapter 5. Ephraim is oppressed, crushed in judgment, because he was determined to go after filth. But I am like a moth to Ephraim, and like dry rot to the house of Judah. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah his wound, then Ephraim went to Assyria and sent to the great king. Assyria is a heathen kingdom. It's probably the first how would I say, Assyria? What kind of a kingdom was it? How about ISIS? What kind of people are ISIS? They cut people's heads off, and they're a terrorist. Sorry. Assyria was a terrorist nation. And what they do is that they would go and pay tribute. They would go and bow down to the Assyrian king and pay him tribute, okay? Instead of going to God and getting right with God and let God handle it. And that's what he's saying, okay? Okay, all right. 13. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah his wound, then Ephraim went to Assyria and sent to the great king. But he is not able to cure you or heal your wound. For I will be like a lion to Ephraim, and like a young lion to the house of Judah. Even I, will tear and go away. I will carry off, and no one shall rescue. When God makes his verdict on Israel, it'll be like a lion. There'll be only, when he gets finished with you, it'll only be hands and arm here and a leg. He's tearing up Israel. That's what he's saying. All right. Yes.
Verse 11,
Yeah. Yeah. And see, and he says later here, that they didn't, he gave them a beautiful law to follow which would make them a good people. Most of the law has to do with treating people well. That's really what it does. The relationship with others, with God. Yeah, they left it. Chapter 6, verse 4 and 7. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? The southern kingdom. He throws them around a little bit. Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early away, right? The dew on a real hot day, you have some dew, a little morning cloud, and you think it's going to be nice today. And it goes away, right? And that's what he's saying here, okay? Verse 5. Therefore I have hewn them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love, and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. By the way, does he want burnt offerings? Yes. But without, you see, but if you go, let's make an analogy. You go to church every time the door's open. But when you're out there in the world, you do other things. You're in the mischief all the time, okay? But you go into church. Now, is God happy about it? You go to church. You're there all the time. More than some of the other good people. Does it account for anything? Not with God. None. None. He would just as soon you not be there. And that's what he's really saying to them. Because they had the words. They do the words, and they throw in a sacrifice and, all of that. Verse 6, for I desire steadfast love, that's what he wants, and not sacrifice. See, not sacrifice without steadfast love is no good. The knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. Burnt offerings, and you don't have that relationship knowledge of God, it's no good. Verse 7, but like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me. I once did a class long ago, and I said that Adam had a covenant relationship with God, and somebody said, Jack, no, he didn't. There was no covenant. It's a different. Well, my point would be, if you look at 7, just for you, look at it. He certainly says, like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. Looks like Adam had a covenant with God. Okay. I only said that just in case that fellas looks in on this video. Okay. And I hope that's not ugly. I'm just using the Bible. Chapter 7, Hosea. All right. Ephraim verse 8 and 11 through 11. Ephraim's like the kingdom, okay, the northern kingdom, mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim is a cake not turned. Now they made cakes. Understand, cakes were made on kind of an open fire kind of a thing, on a kind of a skillet kind of a thing. You know what I mean? It's not an oven so much like we made. He's talking about those cakes, and you flipped them and turned them, right? You understand? So it got cooked on both sides. It's a little different cake. It's not like that great birthday chocolate cake that you had last birthday. Okay, so he says they're a cake not turned. I think we would say, you're a half-baked cake. Okay? And that doesn't sound good, and it's not supposed to. All right. So, all right. So Ephraim is a half-baked cake. Strangers devour his strength, and he knows it not. He didn't even know what's going on. Gray hairs are sprinkled upon him, and he knows it not. He doesn't even he doesn't know what's happening. He's so out of touch with the real God, okay? Verse 10, the pride of Israel testifies to his face, yet they do not return to the Lord their God, nor seek him. For all this, Ephraim is like a dove. Listen, he's like a dove, silly and without sense, calling to Egypt, going to Assyria. Remember I told you, God said, Israel, you're a silly dove. See, they keep wanting to make these agreements with these heathen powers to protect them, right? They go to Egypt, and then they'll go to Assyria. Assyria and Egypt hate each other. That causes problems. But they go in there rather than going to God, see? They're just like a silly dove, flying from one to the other, looking for protection and not going to God, their God. Okay, chapter 8. Verse 1 and 2, and then I have 6 and 8. Set the trumpet to your lips. One like a vulture is over the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant and rebelled against my law. To me they cry. Here's how they sound. Some of our people, I think, sound this way, maybe. Here's how they sound. My God, we, Israel, know you. What are they banking on? They know who he is. They're related to Abraham, you know? So that's their plea, okay? They cry that. My God, you know. We, Israel, we know you. Yeah, right. Verse 6 through 8. For it is from Israel, a craftsman made it. It is not God. Understand, a craftsman made it. That's their idols and stuff, see? Remember, they made calves. That was the first thing they did. They put a calf up at Bethel and up at Dan and started worshiping there. They said that was worshiping Yahweh God, okay? But it wasn't, okay? I mean, they would say that it was. And then they had all these other idols that they made with their hands. It is not God. The calf of Samaria shall be broken to pieces. That's one of those calves that they made in the very beginning in 931 when they decided they weren't going to worship in Jerusalem, and they put those two places of worship in Bethel, just a few miles north of Jerusalem, and then Dan way up there, okay? Made those calves and decided that's where they were going to worship Yahweh. They were going to worship the real God like that. Okay. Verse 7. For they sow the wind, and they reap the whirlwind. The standing grain has no heads. It shall yield no flour. If it were to yield, strangers would devour it. Israel is swallowed up. Already they are among the nations as a useless vessel. And listen, they think there's something right now. Jeroboam is doing well. There's a wealthy class of market folks that they think they're doing really good. Hosea chapter 9. Ephraim is stricken. Verse 16, 17. Ephraim is stricken. Their root is dried up. They shall bear no fruit. Even though they give birth, I will put their beloved children to death. My God will reject them because they've not listened to him. They shall be wanderers among the nations. Chapter 10, verse 11 through 13. Ephraim was a trained calf that loved to thresh, and I spared her fair neck, but I will put Ephraim to the yoke. Judah must plow. That's the southern kingdom. Jacob must harrow for himself. Sow for yourselves righteousness. Reap steadfast love. Break up your fallow ground, for it is the time to seek the Lord. That's Yahweh, is what it says. It's time to seek Yahweh now. They have no time left. They got to do it now, or it's over. That he may come and rain righteousness upon you. It's just funny to me how much more gracious God is than me. He is a forgiving being. See, he's ready to forgive them now. 13, verse 13. You have plowed iniquity, you have reaped injustice, you have eaten the fruit of lies, because you've trusted in your own way and in the multitude of your warriors. And they've won some battles. True enough. I think it's all on them. Chapter 11, verse 1 through 3. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt. So this is a history lesson. God's given them a history lesson now in 11 and chapter 12. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they were called, the more they went away. They kept sacrificing to Baals and burning offerings to idols. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up by their arms, but they did not know that I healed them. The love of God. Chapter 12. We'll end in about a couple of minutes here. Chapter 12, verse 2 and then verse 14. The Lord has an indictment against Judah. That's the southern kingdom. And will punish Jacob, the northern kingdom, according to his ways. He will repay him according to his deeds. Ephraim has given bitter provocation, so his Lord will leave his blood guilt on him and will repay him for his disgraceful deeds. Chapter 13, verse 6. Samaria shall bear her guilt, because that Samaria is another name for it's the capital of the northern kingdom. It's the name for the kingdom as well. Samaria shall bear her guilt, because she has rebelled against her God. They shall fall by the sword. Their little ones shall be dashed in pieces, and their pregnant women ripped open. This happened. Assyria is a terrorist nation, and this is what happened. Let me read this final in 14, and then next time, Lord willing, we'll sum up Hosea and we'll jump right into Micah. The last chapter, 14, 1 through 4. Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take with you words and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity, accept what is good, and we will pay with bulls the vows of our lips. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride on horses, and we will say no more, our God, to the work of our hands. In you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their apostasy. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from them. Now, let's end with this. Almost every prophet, if you look closely, will show you Jesus. He's going to show you the covenant people, the covenant Israel to come. We are Israel. We're God. We are the new Israel. True? Anybody if you have concern about that, let's talk. We're it. And the hope will finally come home. In the median time, it's going to come home to them, because Israel, well, they're never going to come back to Israel. Some of them are going to come back to Judah, to Jerusalem, in the return. About a tenth, a fifth of the whole people. Some of them return. So there is a return in that way, but the real return is when the King David, rules again forever. And who is that? Jesus. Thank you very much. And if you will look at Micah next time, look it over. If you got a chance to read it all, do that. 7 chapters. And we'll finish this and start Micah. Thank you. Have a great week. Hey, girls.